Welcome back to the deep dive. Today, we're diving deep into something, well, I've always found it fascinating, language testing. You're prepping for the LOTE 630 exam and want to ace that integrated writing section, which is no small feat.
You're absolutely right. It is a challenging section. It demands not only strong Spanish skills, but also critical thinking and the ability to build a persuasive argument quickly and effectively.
So, for someone facing this challenge, what's the most common misunderstanding about this section? What do people often get wrong?
Many people think that just understanding the Spanish passage is enough. They focus on vocabulary and grammar, which is important, of course, but they underestimate the critical thinking and argumentation skills needed. This section isn't just about comprehension. It's about using the passage as a springboard to build and defend your own viewpoint.
That makes total sense. Our source material today, the Easy-to-Understand Study Guide for Integrated Writing, LOTE 613 exam, really dives into this process. It lays out a 4-step plan. Should we break those down step by step?
Let's do it. Understanding the process is key to succeeding under pressure.
All right, so the first step is active reading, and we only have 4 minutes for it. It's tempting to just skim the passage, but I'm guessing that's a recipe for disaster.
Absolutely. Active reading is crucial here.
Yeah.
Think of yourself as a detective, looking for clues. You need to identify the author's main argument, their supporting evidence, and any potential biases. Highlight key points, jot down notes. Ask yourself, what is the author trying to convince me of?
So it's not just about understanding the words, but about understanding the author's intention and how they are trying to persuade the reader.
Exactly. And here's a tip from the guide that I think is brilliant. Decide early on whether you agree or disagree with the passage. This will shape your reading and help you focus on finding evidence to support your stance.
I like that. It's like putting on argument goggles from the start.
Right.
You're immediately looking for evidence to either support or challenge the author's claim.
Precisely. It makes your reading much more focused and efficient, which is crucial given the limited time.
Okay, so we've actively read the passage, deciphered the author's intentions. What's next?
Step 2, organize your ideas. And again, we're working with limited time, only 4 minutes to structure our response.
I'm guessing this is where having a clear outline comes in handy. Introduction, body paragraphs with supporting evidence, and a strong conclusion.
You got it. But here's where that decision you made earlier, agreeing or disagreeing with the passage, becomes really powerful. Let's say you decide to disagree with the author. You can immediately start brainstorming your 2 main reasons why, and pulling out those specific examples you highlighted during your reading to support your viewpoint.
So it's like building a case. You're the lawyer presenting your argument to the jury, and the evidence from the passage is your ammunition.
Exactly. And the guide even provides a sample introduction in Spanish to illustrate this. It clearly states the topic from the passage, the writer's stance, and the 2 main reasons they'll be arguing. Boom. Roadmap laid out.
That's super helpful, especially under pressure. Okay, we've got our argument framework. Now it's time to actually write the response, right? And we have a luxurious 16 minutes for this part.
Yes, but 16 minutes can fly by when you're trying to craft a well-written argument in Spanish. The guide emphasizes clear, concise writing. Think, strong topic sentences, relevant evidence from the text, and smooth transitions between paragraphs.
And I'm guessing those specific phrases the guide mentions, like el texto habla sobre, or primero, segundo, en conclusión, are super helpful here.
Absolutely. They not only signal the structure of your response, but also demonstrate that you're directly engaging with the source material. It shows the examiners you're not just stating your opinion, but grounding it in the passage.
So it's like building a bridge between your argument and the text, using those phrases to connect the two. Makes sense. The guide also emphasizes using simple language, right? It's about clarity over complexity.
Precisely. You don't need to show off your entire Spanish vocabulary here. Choose words that are accurate, appropriate, and easily understood by the examiners. Think of it this way. You're trying to win them over with your argument, not confuse them with overly complex language.
I love that. Okay, intro, body paragraphs, clear language. What's left?
The conclusion. It's your last chance to reiterate your stance and leave a lasting impression on the examiners. Summarize your main points, restate your position, make sure it's clear where you stand. The guide gives a good example of a conclusion that ties everything together neatly.
So it's like the closing argument in a courtroom drama, right? You're reminding the jury of the key points and driving home your verdict.
Perfect analogy. But before we celebrate, there's one more crucial step.
Revision. I know it's tempting to skip this when the clock is ticking, but we do have 2 minutes allotted.
And trust me, those 2 minutes are invaluable. It's amazing how many small errors you can catch with the quick review. The guide is right to emphasize proofreading for grammar, spelling, and punctuation. Those little things can really impact your score.
It's like giving your response a final polish before sending it out into the world. Make sure it's shining. But let's be honest, knowing the steps is one thing, mastering them under pressure is another.
Absolutely. And that's where practice comes in. The guide doesn't just tell you what to do, it gives you the tools to actually do it.
Right. It includes practice texts like La universidad en tu computadora and El uniforme escolar, so you can simulate the exam environment.
Exactly. You're not just reading about the steps, you're actually applying them. It's the best way to build confidence and identify any areas where you might need extra practice. The guide also suggests using templates to structure your responses, which can be a lifesaver when you're under pressure.
So it's like having a pre-built framework that you can then customize with your own arguments and evidence. It's like a cheat code for the exam.
That's a great way to put it. And the more you practice with these tools, the more comfortable and confident you'll feel when it's time for the real deal.
So we've walked through the 4 steps, but our expert here brings up a really interesting point. These skills, synthesizing information, forming arguments, communicate. Clearly, they're valuable beyond just the LOTE 613, aren't they?
You're absolutely right. Think about it. This section is essentially asking you to think critically, form your own opinion, and present it in a clear, concise, and persuasive way. Those are skills that are valuable in any field, whether you're writing a report, presenting a project, or even just trying to convince your friend to try a new restaurant.
It's like you're not just prepping for an exam, you're developing a toolkit for life.
Exactly. You're honing skills that will serve you well no matter what path you choose. But before we get too philosophical, let's bring it back to the exam. We've got those 4 steps down, but there's one more question I'm dying to ask.
Oh, I love where this is going. Lay it on me.
The guide emphasizes using simple language. But does that mean complex ideas can't be effectively communicated on this exam? Or is there a way to balance sophistication with clarity?
That's a really interesting question. Can you really showcase your full range of Spanish skills while still keeping things simple and easy to understand? I guess that's what we'll be diving into in part 2 of this deep dive. Stay tuned.
It's a fascinating challenge, isn't it? On the one hand, you want to demonstrate your command of the language, your vocabulary, your grammar.
You want to show off a little, impress those examiners.
Exactly. But you're also under pressure, working against the clock. And ultimately, clarity is king. If your ideas get lost in overly complex sentences or obscure vocabulary, your argument loses its power.
So how do you walk that tightrope? How do you showcase your language skills without sacrificing clarity?
That's the million-dollar question. And thankfully, our guide has some answers. It's all about strategy.
I'm all ears. What's the first strategy?
Choosing your vocabulary wisely. You don't need to cram in every fancy word you know. Think of it like this. If you were explaining something complex to a friend, would you use jargon they wouldn't understand?
Definitely not. It would just make things confusing.
Exactly. It's about being intentional with your word choices. Ask yourself, does this word convey my meaning clearly and accurately? Will the examiners understand it without having to reach for a dictionary?
So it's not about dumbing down your language. It's about refining it for maximum impact. What's the next strategy?
Mastering sentence structure. Avoid those long, winding sentences that could leave the examiners lost in a maze of clauses. Aim for shorter, clearer sentences that express one main idea each.
So it's about breaking down complex ideas into manageable chunks. Makes sense. What else?
Transitions. They're the glue that holds your argument together. The guide suggests some really helpful phrases like primero, segundo, and in conclusion to create a smooth flow between paragraphs.
They're like signposts, guiding the reader through your argument. I like that.
Exactly. And finally, don't underestimate the power of examples. They can make abstract ideas concrete and relatable.
It's like showing, not just telling. And we have that source material to draw from, right?
Absolutely. Use specific examples from the passage to illustrate your points and back up your claims. It shows the examiners you're not just stating opinions, you're grounding them in the text.
Okay, so we've got our 4 strategies for balancing sophistication and clarity. But the guide also delves into the scoring criteria, which feels like a crucial piece of the puzzle.
You're right. Understanding how you'll be evaluated is key to success. The guide highlights 3 main areas: task completion, development of the theme, and writing skills.
Let's break those down. Task completion sounds pretty straightforward. You need to actually answer the question, right?
Exactly. You need to demonstrate that you've understood the prompt and addressed all its components. Don't wander off topic or leave anything unanswered.
So read that prompt carefully and make sure you're hitting all the key points.
Got it.
What about development of the theme?
This is where you flesh out your argument. Provide clear, logical reasons for your stance and back them up with solid evidence from the text. Remember, you're building a case.
So it's not enough to just state your opinion. You need to convince the examiners why they should agree with you. And finally, writing skills. This is where all that grammar and vocabulary practice pays off.
Absolutely. They're looking for clear, correct, and cohesive writing. Pay attention to your sentence structure, grammar, punctuation, and word choice. Those small details matter.
It's about showing you've mastered the mechanics of the language. Makes sense. But let's be honest, even with all this preparation, exam pressure can be intense. Does the guide offer any tips for staying calm and focused?
It does. It emphasizes the importance of staying calm and avoiding unnecessary stress. Remember, you've prepared for this. You've got this.
Easier said than done, right?
Yeah.
But I guess it's about channeling that inner confidence.
Exactly. And the guide reiterates the importance of practice. The more you practice, the more comfortable you'll feel with the format and time constraints.
Practice makes perfect, or as close to perfect as we can get.
Precisely. And remember, even though you're under pressure, try to use simple language. It's better to communicate clearly than to try to impress with complexity and end up confusing the examiners.
Right. We're back to that balance between showing off your skills and keeping things clear.
Exactly. But before we move on, I want to highlight one final point that I think is really important. It's about perspective.
Perspective.
Ah.
How does that apply to the LO 613?
It's easy to get caught up in the technical aspects of the exam. The grammar rules, the vocabulary lists, the time limits.
It can feel very mechanical and formulaic.
Exactly. But it's important to remember that language is more than just a set of rules. It's a tool for communication, for expression, for connecting with others.
That's a great point. It's about remembering the bigger picture.
Precisely. When you approach the integrated writing section with that perspective, it can become a more enjoyable and fulfilling experience. You're not just trying to pass an exam. You're engaging in a process of communication and expression.
That's a really powerful shift in mindset.
And it can make all the difference.
So we've covered a lot of ground in this part. From strategies for balancing complexity and clarity to the importance of understanding the scoring criteria and maintaining a positive perspective.
We've given our listener a lot to think about.
And hopefully a lot to feel confident about. But before we send them off to conquer the LOTE 613, I'm curious, what other resources are out there that can help with preparation?
That's a great question, and we'll dive into those resources when we return for part 3 of this deep dive. Stay tuned.
Welcome back to the deep dive. You're prepped with strategies from our expert, and you're starting to see the integrated writing section as more than just like a hurdle to clear. It's a chance to really, flex some serious Spanish skills.
Yeah. It's about connecting with the language in a deeper way, and that brings us to some additional resources that can help you do just that.
Perfect. Because knowledge is power, especially when you're facing a challenge like this. What resources would you recommend?
First things first, the official LOTE website. It's a goldmine. They often have sample tests, scoring guides, even examples of successful responses.
So you can see exactly what those examiners are looking for and what kind of writing gets high scores.
Exactly. And there are also, plenty of test prep companies out there that offer practice exams and study materials specifically for the LOTE 613.
It's like having a personal trainer for the exam. They can help you identify, any weaknesses and tailor your practice accordingly.
Yeah, they can be incredibly helpful. But don't forget, the most valuable resource is often, right at your fingertips.
Intriguing. What do you mean by that?
Immersing yourself in the Spanish language. Reading, listening, even speaking whenever you can. It's not just about memorizing vocabulary lists. It's about experiencing the language, getting a feel for its rhythm and flow.
So it's about making Spanish a part of your daily life, not just something you study for a few hours a week.
Exactly. Read Spanish books and articles, watch movies and TV shows, listen to music and podcasts. Make it fun.
I love that. Turn your preparation into an enjoyable exploration of the language and culture.
Yeah, and don't underestimate the power of active practice. Find a language partner, join a conversation group, even start a journal in Spanish. The more you use the language actively, the more comfortable and fluent you'll become.
It's like working out a muscle. The more you use it, the stronger it gets.
That's a great analogy. And remember, don't be afraid to make mistakes. Mistakes are proof that you're learning and pushing yourself. Embrace them, learn from them, and keep practicing.
This whole conversation has really shifted my perspective on language learning. It's not just about passing an exam, it's about opening up a whole new world of communication and connection.
I couldn't agree more. It's about expanding your horizons and discovering the beauty and complexity of another language and culture.
So inspiring.
Yeah.
So for our listener out there, as you prepare for the LOTE 613, remember to stay curious, stay engaged, and stay passionate about the language.
Embrace the challenge
Yeah.
and enjoy the journey.
And with that inspiring message, we'll wrap up our deep dive into the LOTE 613 integrated writing section. We hope you feel confident and ready to ace this exam and beyond.